would be remiss if I did not thank the folks that made today possible, and that's our partners, the folks who have been riding with us and supporting us for many, many years. So thank you to Morgan Stanley, who's in the room, Warner Music Group, UBS, the Humanities Studio, Cognizant, Kaiser Permanente, and Dove. Thank you. Hey, y'all. All right, thank you again for believing in this work and supporting and partnering with us for so many years. All right, so as I prepared for this next session, a question came to mind: whose entrepreneurial journey do you find inspiring? And to be honest, it's everybody that's about to come to this stage. So in our next session, we'll hear from women who are storytellers, founders, authors, and multifaceted business architects. So are y'all ready? I'm ready for this conversation. Are you ready? All right, let's do it.
Entrepreneurs take a little idea, a germ of an idea, and take over the world.
Friends and makers, please welcome Ty Randolph and Monique Rodriguez.
Hello. Okay, so we're gonna be fast friends. I'm gonna let you know I'm suffering from allergies and I sound a little crazy today, but I am so excited to be holding space with Monique Rodriguez.
Likewise.
It is my first time meeting you, and I have been a fan from afar of the work that you have done, the brand that you have built. You know, for those of you who don't know, she is in a very elite club of exited founders at scale with a major CPG company, Procter & Gamble. And so it would really be great, maybe we just start by telling folks a little bit more about your journey and how you even got on this path.
Yeah, well, I'm super honored to be here. I'm very excited to have this conversation. But yeah, so I'm the founder and CEO of Mielle Organics, which is a natural textured hair care company. I started the brand in 2014. My previous career before being a CEO founder was a registered nurse. So I was a labor and delivery nurse, and I did that for 8.5 years. And when I was like 22, when I graduated from college, you know, I'm like, this is a great career. This was actually a career that my mom encouraged me to go into. She was very traditional. You have to go to college, you have to find a stable career, you have to find a job that's recession proof, because her whole mentality was, I need to teach you how to survive. When I had this dream of being in the beauty space, it was for her like, this is a cute thing to do, but it's not something that's sustainable. So I did exactly what she told me to do, but when I started, I'm like, this is not how I see myself for the rest of my life. It's a great career, and I don't regret, you know, becoming a nurse, because I feel like it was a part of my journey to help me do what I do today. But it was fulfilling my mom's dream and not necessarily mine. And so in 2013, while I was still working as a nurse, I was 8 months pregnant with my third child, my son, and it was a high-risk pregnancy, and unfortunately, because of the high risk, he passed away from complications. And that was a very traumatic moment in my life. It was a moment of just like darkness and sadness. And I realized that number one, I needed to do something different. And for me, it was developing my faith in God even more, because I couldn't lean on anyone to get me through the loss of my son. It was God that got me through it. And I realized that, you know, my pregnancy was also very high risk for my own life, and you only get one shot at life. And I wanted to do something that was fulfilling for me, something that brought me joy and happiness. And it took me right back to that passion as a child, which was the beauty space. And I decided to go on social media, Instagram. This was back in 2014, right? There was no TikTok, no videos. But I wanted to express myself and talk about this passion that I have for hair care on Instagram. And that passion turned into, you know, posting recipes and making these concoctions. And women started asking, well, can I buy what you're making? Like, I see what you're doing on your hair, and it's, you know, it seems to be working because you have really beautiful hair. And that was a light bulb moment of like, I felt God was using those people as vessels to say, go for it, you know, take the risk, take the calculator risk, trust me that I'm gonna order your steps and I'm going to provide. Even though I may not have been able to see how all of this was gonna come together, I still had to trust the process. And that's exactly what I did, because in my mind, I had nothing else to lose. You know, I have already gone through the worst, and, you know, leaving my nursing career was not something as tragic as my mom thought it was, because when I told her that I was gonna leave my nursing career, she's like, oh my God, no, you're not gonna leave your nursing career. And for me, it was like, I'm gonna do what makes me happy. And, you know, I've grown Mielle over the past 11 years, and we have become the largest Black female-led, Black founded brand in the entire world. With the largest, thank you. We were the first brand to do a 9-figure private equity deal where I still maintain majority ownership. And then 18 months later, we partnered with one of the biggest companies in the world, Procter & Gamble, which allowed me to be the first Black female founder to have the largest exit. So, you know, here I am having this conversation today. So, but I would love to hear your story and more about you. And, you know, you were telling me a little bit backstage, and I was just so impressed with the amazing things that you have done. So I want to hear about how you started and got into your path of entrepreneurship as well.
Well, thanks. First of all, I mean, everything that you've done is so impressive, and I think just such an inspirational testament to pursuing purpose, even when others might not be able to see the path, and carving paths that are unconventional. I always talk about my career as more of a river than a ladder. And I was on the speaking circuit like a couple of years ago, and that became this mantra. But even as I was saying it, what I realized was that I was pretty fixed in thinking, this is exactly what I'm going to be doing for the next couple of years. This is exactly how I'm going to exit a business. This is exactly what's going to happen after. And then when things change or pivot, sometimes you realize, I was saying, be open to what's next and what's new and follow your purpose. But sometimes we can get really attached to security or status, or just living in someone else's dream. For me, I grew up in a little town in South Carolina, Holly Hill, South Carolina. I grew up on a farm, and the town had 2 stoplights. It was so small. The first time we got a fast food restaurant, we had a parade and a half day of school.
Oh, wow.
The fast food restaurant was Hardee's. So I grew up in this tiny town. We would later move to the suburbs of Charleston, but so much of what I wanted to do early on was sort of influenced by what I would become exposed to. So before I ever went to college, I wanted to be a lawyer because of Claire Huxtable. And then I interned at a radio station and wanted to be a journalist. And you know, by the time I got to college, I really, because I was a comms major, started thinking more deeply about filmmaking. And so my intention was to leave college and go to film school. But I'm the oldest of 7, and I thought after college, there were 3 of us in college at the same time, I'm gonna go get a job, make some money. And I took a job at a marketing firm, marketing, telecom, defense, aerospace products, and working for clients like BAE Systems and Raytheon. It was so unsexy and so far from what I had set out to do originally that there were times early on that I thought, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get there from here, because there was a lot of security with the job, but it just didn't fill me up. My path, though, would lead for me taking all of those early marketing skills to go to other marketing agencies like WPP and Publicis, working in digital media and innovation, taking those same skills, applying it to you know, a different medium. And then from there, I was recruited to go to Sony, internal, and do something that was really unique in the commerce and marketing space. Carved out a company, sold it to private equity. Never thought I would be in the PE or finance space, but it was my first exposure to it. After that, Facebook, and then while I was at Facebook, Lionsgate came calling. And when I went to go, when I got the opportunity at Lionsgate, I thought, oh wow, I've had a 15-year career now, or 10-year career. I'm finally gonna get back to filmmaking the way that I intended. And the opportunity, they had a joint venture with Kevin Hart at the time, and there was an opportunity to partner with them to take it to market. And what I thought was gonna be a very traditional studio path ended up putting me on a path for 8 years, the entire time I've been in LA, has been building ventures and telling stories with creators. So starting off as SVP of marketing, working my way up to CEO of the company at Heartbeat, leading 2 capital raises, one that was strategic, one that was PE, $100 million capital raise, one of the biggest ever private company capital raises in the US by Black women, and in really good company because you're one of the others. Fun fact, when we were doing press around it, we were trying to contextualize how often someone who looked like me had done that. You were one of the few names that had come up, so there were really so few. And then about a year and a half ago, I left there, and an idea that had been baking probably for the last 10 years of my career, an opportunity to build something that was right at the intersection of content and commerce and media, but this time to really sort of carve it in the image that I imagined presented itself. And it was a really, quite candidly, difficult transition when you're accustomed to a very particular thing. But I can tell you, and I can't speak about all the details, we're announcing this summer, so we'll get into more of it. It has been so fulfilling to pursue purpose, and along the way, you'll get these little lights and glimmers that tell you you're on the right path, you know?
Yeah.
And to that end, I'm really interested in, like, what were some of those transformative moments on your process, or times when you might have been discouraged or thinking, is this it, where, you know, you got this sort of light at the end of the tunnel, or this inspiration to keep going?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And as you were talking, I was just sitting here thinking, like, it's such an amazing, awesome story. And I think that as we sit here and tell our stories, it looks like the quick highlight reel, and it looks like there was a very straight path to success. But neither one of us, and I'm speaking for you, because every successful person that I've met, they have all gone through like challenges, right? And there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, but we have to be able to see that light. Yes. And I think the way that you see that light is also by faith. So for me, my faith has been that compass, right? And prayer has been the blueprint. Even when I don't understand how things are going to work out, I still have to have my faith that, you know, God has given me this vision. I'm trusting the mission that he's instilled in me, and I'm also trusting that he's gonna provide the provision, right?
Yeah.
And I remember there was a moment through my journey where, you know, people see the headlines, oh, this 9-figure investment deal, they sold to the largest company in the world, but prior to that, maybe in like 2-3 years before that, we were actually $2 million in the hole. We were not profitable, right? And, you know, that was a moment in my career of being an entrepreneur that I was really questioning, like, is Mielle going to make it? Are we going to survive as a company? Because we were operating at a loss because we had spent so much in marketing and innovations, and we, you know, had a line of credit. We were using the line of credit incorrectly. Now, mind you, we came into this business space and we did not have any mentors. It was my husband and I was a nurse, he was a project engineer. Neither one of us came from this space, and we were figuring it out as we go and leaning on each other for guidance and hope. And we were, what you don't know what you don't know, right? And sometimes you don't even know what to ask. And we found ourselves in this space, and then we were knocking on the doors of investors. And this was around like 2019, and we were meeting with this investment group. And we met with them for about a good 6 months. They were doing their due diligence, going through the brand, and making very false promises that they were going to invest in us. And then at the last hour, when the banks were knocking on our door, trying to call our line due, they pulled their backs on us and didn't invest. And we needed that. Their investment was going to be the lifeline for our company. And they were willing to give us $2 million, but they wanted 40% of the company. Wow. And the company was valued way more than that.
Yeah.
You know, and even though, because we were, if you valued us on the trajectory, the future trajectory, not looking at, you know, they're not profitable now, but they were a new investment group. They were very scared to take risks. So they were valuing us to basically take over a majority of, almost majority of our company, right? And I felt in my spirit that they were not the right partners. I felt in my spirit this was not a good deal. So when they did pull out, I felt like that was God answering a prayer. That was something that I thought I wanted and I thought I needed, but little did I know that God was sending the right investors over a couple of months later who then turned around, which happened to be New Voices, Richard Lou Dennis, who invested, I'm trying to remember now, he invested $5 million for 10%, right? And so that was a moment of like, now as I look back and reflect, like you just gotta hold on. You gotta hold on to that promise. You gotta hold on to your faith, because you may not see how it's going to work out. I didn't know that Rich Dennis was gonna come in at the last hour and, you know, get us in a space where now he put us on a great trajectory to be profitable, and then we experienced 4X growth, and then we were able to do the big deal with Berkshire. It was all, so I didn't see all of that, but I just tell people just hold on to and trust the process, because you will go through challenges, but it's really about how do you overcome how you're going to respond to those challenges. Are you going to sink or swim? And I felt at that moment it wasn't time for us to sink. It was time for us to swim and rise above it.
Yeah. I think that's so important to share, because to your point, sometimes these paths seem so linear, and it can be very intimidating or discouraging to others who are saying, well, I'll never get what she has because I don't have the expertise, or I don't have the team, or I don't have the capital. And it's really encouraging to know that you didn't have any of those things when you started. And you know, sometimes when it's meant to be, when an idea has come, I firmly believe that when an idea's time has come and you're the right person for that, it will manifest. But also there, I believe, is tremendous lessons in all of our failures. I tried to, my first entrepreneurial effort, I was still working at Publicis at the time. I tried to start a company right at the beginning of the Great Recession, in my 20s, and it was a e-commerce business, really focused on Black women designers, and who I felt like were under-highlighted. They were hard to find, and I just felt like there was this built-up demand. I'd done market research. I got a friend of mine to invest. And this is before Shopify, so everything from the commerce platforms to setting up the fulfillment to designing the site, all of this, finding the designers, you know, it was very laborious. And I went through this process. We kept the business for a year. We poured so much money into it. And I felt like such a failure when I had to say, oh, this isn't gonna be its time. That said, I cannot tell you how many times between then, 2008, and today in 2025, I've used so many of those same lessons when it was, okay, how do I manage a P&L for the first time that's independent? How do you develop a team? What do you do when you're trying to even do a friends and family round? And so none of it is lost, I believe, right?
Absolutely.
Like it all adds to our ultimate journey. And you know, to that end, I'd say, you know, what sort of gems and insights have you picked up along the way would you want to share with the audience, especially those who are building something, whether it's internal and inside an organization, whether you're building your own companies, or even if it's just about how you're architecting your own careers, right? What advice would you give? And I know you just wrote a book where you give a lot of this advice.
I give a lot of advice.
But what would you want to share with the audience today?
So when it comes to you know, building your brand or changing your career path, you know, don't be afraid to take smart, calculated risks. Like you have to be able to bet on yourself, because if you don't bet on yourself, you can't expect any other person to believe in your vision or bet on you either. Because I realized over this journey that our investors, and they came back and told us this, you know, after we met with them, after, you know, we sold the company, but they invested in us because they saw the tenacity, the resilience. They saw how we were passionate about what we created, and they bought into the vision because we also had that spirit of humility. And when you are oh, sorry, I thought I heard something. And when you are like growing, it's important to have that spirit of humility and not be afraid to ask questions. There is no question that is a dumb question. And just because I am the CEO of the company, I don't know everything, and none of us should know everything.
Right.
But I feel what a smart person does in any industry is to always stay curious, surround yourself with smart people that know more than you in areas that you may not be an expert in, and glean on them and ask questions, because that's how you learn. And so the best thing I would say is to bet on yourself, take risks, stay curious, ask questions, and be willing to, you know, look stupid, you know? And you have to be okay with that. And I think that most entrepreneurs are afraid of like public perception and what people think. But I can tell you that when I started my brand, people probably thought I was crazy. People thought I was crazy for leaving a stable nursing career to take this risk of doing something that I had no experience in. People thought I was crazy, the things that I was posting on social media. They thought I was crazy when I was doing Instagram lives and dancing and connecting and engaging with my community, but I was building community. And my community is what carried me, and my community is what was attractive to, you know, potential investors. But I really didn't care about how I looked to the public, so I was okay with looking crazy here and there.
And I think that's so important because, especially in finance and fundraising and venture building, so often women are sorely represented in these rooms, Black women in particular. And so I think sometimes not seeing ourselves reflected can lead to a deficit of confidence, right? Even in the things that you know, you'll know your market, you know your product, you'll be convinced, you know, about your strategy. But walking to a room and no one looks like you, sometimes their questioning of you can cause you to think that you don't know. But really, women are controlling and influencing 70% of consumer spending worldwide. So there is a deep level of expertise that we just inherently carry in the market every day, even if you have to start as a focus group of one. And so I think really rooting yourself in what it is that you do know, even if that is just, because you don't have to know everything. You're not building every business in the world. You're building your business. You don't have to reach every consumer in the world. It's really about cultivating a community around your proposition. And I think building that confidence out of, like you said, your conviction and the own competence in your sphere of knowledge and your sphere of influence is so important. And what you will find if you're willing to be the chief question asker, whether that's you're an intern or you're sitting on a board, you'd be surprised by the lack of curiosity or the lack of confidence that exists with folks to actually get to an answer. And so I would often be told, whether it was in, you know, a pitch for private equity, if I was talking to a brand and getting them to come on, oh wow, like you have such a command of things. And it's because I asked a million questions and had a million and said, explain it to me like I'm a 3-year-old more times than I could count. And just as an aside, and I remind myself this all the time, the big complicated explanations aren't the ones that are most profound. The simplest and the rawest that you can get an idea in its purest form is where the real genius lives. And I think it's just so impressive how you articulate such a clear vision and how that vision, it wasn't an overnight success, but relative to venture building in such a short period of time was able to see such outsized success. It's really, really inspiring. And as you look, you know, to the future and think about what's next, like how do you continue to innovate and dream after accomplishing, you know, such huge wins?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And then just to that point, you know, about being in the room, you know, I did used to suffer with like imposter syndrome and wondering if I belonged there. But I read this book and I just wanted to give this nugget as women, right? And we're in these rooms, sometimes we're afraid to ask questions because we're afraid of how we may look or if the question may be a dumb question. But I was reading this book and I forgot what book it was, what the name of the book was, but it told me, and this helped give me the confidence that pretty much everybody in the room that you're in are all thinking the same thing, right? And most people are also driven by their own internal egos. And they're sitting there really not even paying attention or wondering what you're saying, because they're more so concerned about how they look in the meeting themselves.
Absolutely.
So when you take your own like insecurities out of it and stop overthinking and saying that I belong in this room and really nobody's paying that much attention to me as we think people are, you know, you realize that like, oh, like it's not as bad, because we're all suffering with the same type of insecurities in one way, shape, or form, right? I mean, I don't think there's no one in this room that can say they haven't been insecure at some point or time in their life. We're all human. You know, we all have flaws. No one here is perfect. So when you take that into consideration, like don't be afraid to just put yourself out there and show up in the room and own that room and know that you belong there. And to your question about the legacy of Mielle and what's next, for me, yes, we have accomplished so much, but I really feel like this is only the beginning, because for me, building my brand and my legacy is about community impact, and how can we continue to uplift the community as we continue to climb this ladder of success. Because success is really not about, it's not really about success, it's really about significance. And if I can leave an impact to the community that I serve, to create this safe space and platform where Black women can show up, be seen, be represented, be heard, and knowing that we're creating great products for them, you know, I feel like I'm doing my job, because I'm leaving that legacy for other women to look at me and say, wow, if Monique did it, you know, she's not any different from me, I can do it as well too. And we have to normalize what success looks like in our community, because this is not something that we see on a normal basis. These are not opportunities that me and you get. Our community doesn't see that on a normal basis. So my whole goal is to normalize this, to be impactful, and to, you know, spread my brand into multiple categories, not just to be a brand that focuses on hair care, but to be a brand that's a full lifestyle brand. And I think full lifestyle focuses on the holistic approach of overall wellness.
I love this. Well, you said that you wanted to have a significant and impactful, you know, presence and legacy, and I think this has been a very significant and impactful conversation. Thank you so much, Monique. This was such a pleasure.
Thank you.